Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. How are you, my friends? I hope you are really well today, and I hope that I can brighten your day by bringing you some really good news today, which is that despite what it might seem like, despite what it might feel like occasionally, it is actually not complex to improve your marriage by 100%, by so much. It is actually simple and totally doable. Yes, for you. And again, I know that it might feel like you don't know where to start, or that there are so many issues at play, or there are too many issues at play in your marriage, so that it will have to be this big deal, big complex ordeal to make changes. But the truth is, you really just haven't, or you just probably likely haven't ever known and used an approach that made the changes that you want simple and doable. And that, of course, is because no one taught you, or what you were taught didn't work so well. And I'm laughing, not because I think it's funny. I actually think it's a tragedy. I think sometimes I laugh when I'm facing like a sad, hard truth, right? So, but here's the thing. Everything that I've talked about on this podcast so far comes from different parts of one simple, doable process that truly is the solution for amazing marriages, amazing love as highly sensitive people. It is the path to having that for yourself in your own marriage. So when clients work with me, I take them through a 4-step process. And of course, this process is totally adaptable for each person and their unique circumstances and challenges and goals in their love life, in their marriage, right? But I think of this as the 4 steps, or I oftentimes call it the 4 pillars of an amazing marriage, and really life as a highly sensitive person. So we're going to talk about this today. I want to share that with you so you can understand these 4 pillars, these 4 steps, because this is the process that I've used myself and really have developed over the past 20 years or so, that has truly taken me from being, I don't know if you've heard my stories of my past self, but of being really an insecure woman with lots of struggles in her relationships and her financial life. I'm talking about myself, that her of the past, right? And really like back then, like feeling like she couldn't contribute in the world in the way she wanted to, right? That was past me. And this process has taken me to where I am now, which is being so confident, so in love and happy in my marriage, so loving and honest and resilient and courageous and playful. Like I'm just totally enjoying my life. While at the same time, I'm not just contributing in a really meaningful way, in a way that I feel passionate about in this world, and that's really making a difference to so many people's lives, but I'm also supporting myself and my family financially really well, which was really a holdup for me in the past, really problematic for me when I was younger. So I attribute all of this to this, what I've kind of distilled down into this 4 steps, this 4-step process that I will share with you today. I want to lay out with you today. So first and foremost, these 4 pillars are the guide, or kind of like the map, that will allow you to take your marriage from wherever it is right now, even if it's quite unhappy, to really an amazing place, like a thriving marriage, right? And I've even made a little visual map that you can use to follow these steps. And it's going to be the cover for this podcast. So if you click the link in the show notes to the post that has this blog post on my website, you'll see that map. And right now I want to dive into the basics of each of these 4 steps or pillars for you today. But of course, I'm going to share a little bit more background so you can understand why. Like, what's the point? What am I even talking about? So these steps are not just learning some like actions you can take to make things better in your marriage, right? Although within each of them, when I work with my clients, I teach very actionable things to do, of course, right? Like things to say. The podcast here offers a lot of these too. So of course there are actions to take, but the 4 pillars are actually what I think of as the foundation for lasting love and really an amazing marriage for highly sensitive people. So that means they go way deeper than the little things that you can like remember to do or the actions you can take. They're much more like a way of being that you can learn. They're really a foundational mindset and emotional agency and way of being that truly lays the groundwork for the rest to come naturally, right? Like communicating effectively, like really effective, graceful conflict resolution, like taking a lot of the actions we've been talking about in the connection episodes that I've been sharing lately. And ultimately feeling that connection and love and experiencing romance and joy and laughter and, supporting each other and, managing the household together, all of that, right? All of that good stuff comes downstream from mastering these foundational steps. So, in other words, these steps are really the source of taking these actions, of the doing the things that lead to great interactions, great successful navigation of life together as a couple, right? The actions that bring love like smack into the center of your life with your honey. So these steps are the solution, the foundational solution that lead to all of that and having ultimately the amazing, loving human marriage you want as a highly sensitive person. And I really think of it as a foundation to creating an ever-deepening happiness in your marriage and well-being in your life, right? Because they're not just about your marriage, they're about you mastering these foundational skills. And I'm going to talk about what that leads to a little bit more in a few minutes. But really, when you master they lead to the most stable, sturdy, secure, powerful, loving foundation inside of yourself from which to relate to your partner and the world in general. So if you've been listening to my podcast, you'll have heard me talking about marriage as a house or a home of love. And I love that metaphor. I think it's a really useful, apt metaphor. And these steps, these pillars, as I always refer to them in my learning site, they really are the foundation, the pillars, right? The foundational pillars of a building that hold that house up, right? So everything good and loving and joyous and nurturing and fun in that home depends on this strong, sturdy foundation. So again, I obviously can't seem to emphasize this enough, but these steps are the foundation that hold up the love we want. And I want to make sure to reiterate that this process is not just one that's worked for me personally, just me. It's worked for all my clients in similar ways. And the extra fun part is while we're doing this work and focusing this work around their relationship, what always happens is at the same time that they're transforming their marriages in this way, other areas of their life tend to transform for the better as well. They find themselves showing up in their lives with so much more confidence, just like all the different areas, right? And lightness and feeling good about themselves in all these arenas. I've seen so many clients create so much more like financial abundance. They've gotten higher paying and more fun and interesting careers during and after our time together. And I've seen, decades long painful sort of parental dynamics, like relationships with their moms or dads, right? Totally shift and become so much better. And I've seen relationships with their children improve dramatically. And I've seen women start to move towards dreams that they would barely even let themselves have before, because they didn't have the confidence in themselves or the belief that it was possible for them, or the capacity to always know how to support themselves and feel secure and safe as they reached for these dreams. So, whole lives have totally changed for this so much better because of mastering this process, or even just beginning to learn this process, right? And I'm not even mentioning the differences it makes for my clients, for their partner and their husbands and their families, right? As my clients master this, it makes such a big difference in their families' lives, in their loved ones' lives. So really, when we learn and use this process, we unlock truly like the keys to a better life in all arenas. And I really think of this process and these steps as the meta skills that make living life as a highly sensitive person not just tolerable, but really fulfilling and rich and positively impactful, right? In other words, with these 4 steps, we unlock our capacity to make a hugely beneficial contribution to our own lives and our world, right? In the unique way we each want to. So I have not yet talked in detail about these steps on the podcast, but nonetheless, much of what I'm going to share here will totally ring a bell if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, or if you've been on my email list reading my emails. And that's because everything I've talked about on this podcast fits into one of these steps. I can't help but speak from these steps, like they underlie everything that I share with you. So perk those ears of yours as I lay out these 4 steps, first briefly and then a little bit more in depth. So I do want you to keep in mind before I dive in, that I know that you might be like, as you're listening, wait, but how do I do that as I share each step? And so I do want to share that this episode isn't a place for me to go into great depth on each of these skills, each of these steps. That's really what I do with my clients, and we work deeply on together over a period of time until they really get these steps in their bones. And it's really about learning how to work with your mind, body, heart system, right? Your mind, your perceptions, your old conditioning, your nervous system patterning, which is truly the source of all your happiness and or unhappiness in your marriage and beyond. But as I lay out each of these steps a little bit more in depth, I will offer you a question or a few for each step that will help you start to step into or tap into the essence of each step. So it will begin to give you a tiny bit of a taste of implementing these steps inside of yourself. So might be a good idea to take some notes and write these questions down and write these steps down if you'd like. All right, so here are the 4 steps or pillars of my 4-step process. The first one is develop sensitive awareness. In other words, I sometimes put this, be highly and kindly self-aware. The second step is own your power. In other words, be responsible for all that you can be responsible for. In other words, take responsibility. 3, master emotional agency. In other words, take charge of your feelings. And the last step is love on purpose. And that one is simple. It's simple, but not always easy, right? It's love yourself first and foremost, and then your partner. Tap into love. And what all of this really means in a kind of nutshell is take your focus back from your husband and where he may be falling short, and use all the energy you regain from that to build a fiercely loving, self-advocating, high-integrity relationship with yourself, meaning your thoughts and your feelings and your nervous system, and then offer that same fierce love and integrity out to your partner from the deepest, most genuine place inside of you when you are ready. And if all you get from this podcast is that and unpacking that in your own life and marriage, amazing changes are going to happen. So let's talk more about the first pillar, which is developing sensitive awareness, or simply being more self-aware with kindness. So this is really where we learn to look with kindness and curiosity at where our own sensitive human brains are creating barriers to love, right? Unhappiness in love. And this is really important. We do this not from like our critical, judgy brain, like judging ourselves, right? But from what I call our wiser brain or our higher brain. In other words, we learn to see our negative sort of primal brain thoughts and patterns and beliefs that keep us from the love and the connection we want. And I guarantee as human beings living in our modern world, we are riddled with these thoughts and beliefs that keep us from love. It's really just how we come wired in this day and age. But we really do this with sensitivity. And what I mean by that is attunement, attention to the subtle ways that our brains are doing this. But also what I mean by sensitivity is with compassion, right? So we learn to be the compassionate witness of our own thoughts, our own lizard brains. Episode 6 will explain lizard brains, highly connected to this. So you totally go listen to that. But we learn to see, witness, and hear what those things in us, that all that old conditioning, what that's telling us and what we are believing that are really barriers to the love we want to experience. And we get to see really what all this leads to in terms of how we feel in our marriages, right? And we want to see all this, although it can be uncomfortable at first and maybe always, because that is how that more critical, fearful, judgy mental part of our brain doesn't get to run the show, right? As soon as we see it, how it's being harsh with you, how it's being harsh with your husband, when you look at that, you'll be able to not be so enmeshed in it and therefore have the opportunity to shift that if you want to. We can't change what we don't see. So this is essential. When we look at, with kindness, how we are being critical or judgmental of ourselves, of our partner, we can change that, right? And the truth is here, just as a side note, judgment never heals or leads you closer to love and connection. It always does the opposite. And in our sensitive brains, there is this tendency, as I've talked about a lot, to have that flaw sight, right? To always be sort of, not on purpose, but unconsciously seeing what's wrong. So this is a super important piece of this changing our marriages is starting here. And an essential part of this, again, is learning how to be sensitive to ourselves, compassionate to our very normal, very human, sensitive brains, right? And so this helps us be primed for the next steps which will allow us to guide ourselves into more safety, more ease, more love, all the good things. So this sensitive awareness is the first step to really harnessing your power to be in loving integrity with your sensitive self and make your marriage way better than average. So for more on this, I invite you to go over to the show notes, which is where I am putting a bunch of links for each of these steps. So you'll find for this first step, I'm going to put links to other podcast episodes that go into more depth on this, so you can right now or over this next week start to kind of get some more skillfulness and understanding of developing sensitive awareness. And you'll also find links for the other steps there as well. So enjoy that. This was my way of helping you really go deeper into each of these topics that I'm just skimming the surface of today. But I do want to offer you right now the question that you can ask to begin developing more sensitive awareness right now. And that is, it's actually kind of a statement. It's, hey, I'm a sensitive human being with a sensitive brain. What's going on in there? What's going on in there, my dear self? Yeah. And your hint here is just to, from a kind place, begin witnessing the fear-based, judgy, victim-y, critical thoughts that are swirling around in that beautiful, sensitive brain as yours, and witnessing them as thoughts, right? As self-protective thoughts trying to help you, but pain-producing ones. Notice how when you think those thoughts, like just isolating a specific one, just notice what that produces in you, what feeling that calls up in you. Most of the time, these types of thoughts will produce suffering of one sort or another and division in your marriage. All right, moving on to step 2, owning your power or being responsible for all you can. So I'd like you to think of this actually just as like a deepening of the last step, or maybe even a pre-step to the next one. This is like a sub-step that's kind of in between 1 and 3. And this is really about being responsible for your side of the street, which means letting your partner be responsible for his side of the street, staying out of his business and focusing on your own business. So said in a different way, this is about no longer giving your power over your experience to your partner and circumstances outside of yourself over which you have no control to determine your feelings, and instead to own your feelings and your experience as your own, as one you create inside of yourself by how you relate to those circumstances outside of yourself. So this really means seeing how you give his actions and words and ways so much power over how you feel, and therefore over how you act and react and interact with your partner. Right? It's about seeing how your interpretations and narratives and beliefs and perspectives and judgments lead you away from or closer to the love you want, depending on what those interpretations and narratives and perspectives are. Right? And so even if that sounds absurd right now, like that your feelings, that all of this comes from you, it's the truth. Your feelings come from you and all of your old programming and conditioning, right? That's what it really comes from. Those feelings lead to how you act and react and interact, right? And therefore, the results that you get in your marriage. So when I work with clients, I have very clear tools that we use to see all of this and break it down so clearly. It's like very step by step and incredibly simple and illuminating to start to see all this. So this is really like taking that sensitive awareness deeper, right? To this deeper level. We need to really see first and then own what we're creating for ourselves and between ourselves and our partner. That's when we start to be able to next step into so much more actual choice and power. right? The seeing and the owning of it gives you the power, right? Instead of leaving you powerless and dependent on your husband doing things certain ways for you to be happy and peaceful and all of the good things that you want to feel, right? And giving him, instead of like leaving you powerless to be who you want to be and show up how you want to be and feel how you want to feel in your marriage, right? So this is why we call this step owning your power. As hard as it can be, especially at first, to really take responsibility for your thinking and feelings and actions, and to really see that those come from you and aren't created by him, it really gives you all your power back over those emotions and actions, and therefore over the culture in your marriage. Once you've truly understood this owning your power thing and truly internalized it, it's easy to kind of come from this place of like, although I feel how I feel, I can't change the world out there and my partner, right? When I try, I've noticed it usually makes things worse in my internal world and in the external world between us, right? But I have a whole lot of power over my internal world. That is where my power lies, to choose my experience and improve my life and my marriage. So that is where I'm going to focus my energy, and that is going to make the utmost difference possible in my life and marriage, right? So from that place, right, once you're there, you're freed up and motivated to meet your own essential wants and needs so well and really move yourself towards more fulfillment and peace, and therefore ultimately free your partner up to feel safe to be who he really is. And that ultimately positions you best to have that loving culture and get that love and safety between you, and that joy really that can enter back in your marriage. So mastering this step really gives you the power of choice you need to take the next step, which is about stewarding your emotions and ultimately, therefore, how you act and the results you get, right? So here's the question that I offer you for helping you own your power. Actually, this is a few questions, so take them all down and explore each of them. Where am I forgetting to be in my own business and not his? What can I be more responsible for here? And hint, this is like your emotions, your thoughts, your perceptions, right? And also, of course, your actions. Where am I creating an experience I don't like or want? Unintentionally, like where am I unintentionally creating an experience I don't want to be having? And what do I want to experience here? All of these questions are going to help you step back into your business and take more ownership, and therefore have capacity to have a different and better experience. Again, head to the show notes if you'd like to see be pointed to specific episodes that will help with this even more. All right, so those first steps are intimately linked, and I think of them also as the first of two wings in the process. And I'm always so thrilled to see as my clients just start beginning to master these two steps, or even just start using these skills or developing these skills, the helplessness to change things and the barriers to love start falling away, and love and acceptance and peace really immediately starts to bubble back up in their marriages. And these next two steps, step 2 and 3, I think of as the other wing, where we're really starting to be more intentional and sort of build a way of being that intentionally creates what we want, purposefully, deliberately leads us to exactly what we're wanting in our marriages. So that leads me to step 3, which is master emotional agency. And you will have heard me call this mental emotional stewardship, nervous system shepherding. All of this means the same thing. I've been actually referring to it more as emotional sovereignty as well, guiding your emotions, controlling your feelings, taking charge of your experience and emotional life. All of this is the same thing, pretty much, for the most part, right? So it's really about taking loving charge of your feelings. I kind of joke about that this is where we get great at being the master of our own emotions and not the master of our partner. Yeah? We drop the mastering our partner thing and we take back charge of ourselves, right? In other words, we continue to release control over him and take control over our own feeling. And of course, actions. And that's how we take charge of our results as well. So we've actually already begun this process with the first 2 steps, and this is a continued deepening of mastering and taking fiercely loving leadership of our own mind, nervous system, feelings, actions, and results in our marriage. So we do this in a few ways. We address the source of pain and suffering and those barriers, so that much of it simply stops arising. We question and we look at what it's creating and we decide on purpose if we like what it's creating. And then if we don't, we choose to shift it on purpose. We learn to let go of those barriers. And of course, with my clients, I teach them very specifically exactly how to do this. It might sound a little mysterious right now, but we melt a lot of that old conditioning, that patterning, and the way of thinking that is keeping us from what we really want in our marriages. And we also, as part of this, we learn how to relate lovingly and peacefully and with confidence to the difficult emotions that do continue to come up. Because as humans, we cannot just never have negative emotions again. Right? We're human beings, but we can learn how to have so much more ease and peace with them, which makes them not nearly as much of a problem. It makes them not nearly so bad. It makes it so that they don't run the show in our lives and have us having a lot of drama and reactivity and divisive behavior in our marriages. And the other piece of emotional agency here is we get good at deliberately, intentionally choosing emotions that we want to have in our marriage, right? So we guide our minds and ourselves into feeling so much more of what we want to feel. Comfort, for example, connection, love, support, safety, security, trust, worthiness, even passion, lightness, fun, right? This is where we really deepen our ability to harness our power of guiding our emotional life, no matter what our partner is doing or not doing, right? This is where we become emotional sovereign, emotional rulers, emotionally independent. And this is sometimes where we actually choose emotions that allow us to show up as who we want to be and create the actions that bring us the results we want in our marriages, which aren't always comfortable. So sometimes we might actually choose emotions that don't feel so great, such as like the courage to be vulnerable, to say the hard thing that will lead to more understanding, right? Or the calm that will help you, which does generally feel good, right? The calm that will help you articulate something so much better than anger would have, right? So you can resolve a conflict and create more understanding and supportiveness between you, right? This is where we learn to relate, for example, to regret in a healthy way so that we can allow ourselves to have that feeling and be compelled by it to take repairing actions, like saying I'm sorry in our marriage, right? We don't want to just always feel happy all the time. That's not where effective action always comes from. So when we know how to guide our emotions in this way, choose our emotions and use them for great results, for taking great actions and ultimately getting great results in our life, of course, then our marriage is way more full of security and love and lightness and laughter and respect and connection and support, right? So to really master this step, it means learning a few skills really well, but each one is actually really simple and totally doable. So again, look in the show notes to hear some episodes that dive more deeply into this and give you some more insight into how to develop this emotional agency. But right now, here's a question you can use to get a taste of it. Here it is. How can I gently guide myself back to the feelings I want to feel right now? Or that would help me take the most healing, useful actions in this particular circumstance. Which leads me to the last step or pillar, which is love on purpose. And this is all about choosing love, right? This is the time to love yourself, your partner, and both of your humanness. This is where we expand our capacity to love and recognize that love is always the best choice for us. Love feels amazing, and love leads to beautiful choices for yourself, even such things as setting boundaries, which is sometimes very important in a marriage. And love leads to taking actions in your marriage that are loving, that are connecting, that bring about the most wonderful experiences, interactions, and gives the best chance for your partner to show up in the same way himself and love you in the same way. And it also allows you to receive that love so much more deeply and know it and feel it like it's rock solid in your marriage. So this is really where we develop the understanding that loving and love are the most essential and healing gifts to yourself and your relationship. And since we already know how to guide ourselves into the feelings we want to be feeling, we were able to access and feel this love so much more deeply and continuing to build it in until it's like the ground we walk on, the air we breathe in our marriage. Even when like our partner's just being a messy, flawed human, right? And even when we're just being messy, flawed humans. Yeah. And so much of this is about developing love for yourself and being there for yourself, being like that loving, like having your own back in a loving way, like a fiercely loving mama, right? Being loving towards your pain and your hurt and your humanness. And then doing the same for your partner. And deepening your fondness for him and loving the entirety of who he is. One thing that's so beautiful about loving on purpose, loving you on purpose, but especially loving him on purpose, is it's not about waiting for him to do some other thing than he's doing or be some other way than he is being, than he is, right? It's not about waiting for any of that to change, for you to be able to have so much love in your life, right? So having so much love in your life is truly an inside job that will gift you with the feeling that you want, with feeling how you want to feel in your marriage. And what's beautiful about this, and kind of ironic, is that it's also what makes it most likely for your partner to be the most loving version of himself and really actually do more of those things that you love him to do, right? Loving on purpose paves the way for love to be the very foundation of your lives together. And I want to make it really clear, this doesn't mean that if you build all this love in and you have all this love in your life for yourself and for your partner, it doesn't mean you have to stay in the marriage. We can totally love and leave. And to get a bigger taste of this, I point you directly to episode 15. This will go into this more in depth if you're like, what is she even talking about? Definitely check out that episode. It's a really important one. But usually and almost always what happens is as we have access to this love, as we root ourselves in it, our marriages become ones that we do deeply love, and we don't want to leave. We want to stay and soak up the love that's here and enjoy this life with this person. So the question here that you can ask to get a bigger taste of this is, how can I be more loving with myself? How can I think in a more loving way about myself and about my partner? And or how can I bring more love into my mind, body, heart system and marriage today? And trust your answers. Like, listen to what those answers are that come up in you. And you're going to have some wisdom. You're going to have some answers if you open your mind to listen for them. All right. So those are the 4 steps in a nutshell. And I want you to know that I do teach these steps as separate things, right? Because that's an easier way to kind of master each skill. And when you coach with me, you learn each of these deeply and individually, and all that goes into each step in detail and in depth, so that it becomes natural and easy for you. But when it comes down to it, they actually really all work in synchrony, right? Often at the same time. Like again, going back to the example of apologizing, like when I'm choosing to apologize for something, for example, to my husband, I'm not only being sensitively aware, right, of like what led me to do the thing I'm apologizing for, of how I feel remorse, and of how I want to right the wrong, right? I'm sensitively aware of all of that. And I'm taking responsibility for myself and owning the power that I have to be who I want to be, right? Like attending to my side of the street. So that's owning my power. And I am also choosing to be the agent of my emotions and to love on purpose by intentionally going to my husband with love and care, and at the same time holding myself with that same kind of love and care and kindness as I feel that remorse or regret and the vulnerability of saying I'm sorry. Right? And that's like an example of like using these steps in conjunction, and how so often the result of that is this beautiful, like my husband will respond to me with like, oh, sweetie, it's okay. I love you. Like, I get it. And we just are connected and we move on from there. Yeah. And the other thing here is that these steps, once you've learned them, will help you work through any issue or problem that you're experiencing in your life with your partner. They are the solution to any issue, always. So they are like the map that you can walk to handle and tackle any issue and come out the other side feeling love and connection and with great solutions for moving forward into a better place inside of yourself and your marriage. And so if this feels like a lot, it's only because some of this languaging is new to you and you haven't learned all of these skills yet, step by step. Just like maybe learning to play the piano. If you can play the piano at first felt like a lot, right? It's not that complex, right? It's just some practice. So I do want you to keep in mind that developing any one of these skills, even a little bit, like even just a little bit of tastes that you've gotten here today, or if you go listen to the episodes that dive deeper into each one, just getting the taste of them, just developing them a little bit will improve things quite a bit. But mastering them all, that is life-changing forever. Your life and your marriage will never look the same, but only in all the best of ways. I've been lucky enough to recently be in touch with a few old clients who ended our time together months or years ago, who went through these 4 steps and really started to master this process. And I just want to share what they are now reporting years later. This one came through an email, surprise email out of the blue. And she said, I feel so content with myself, so peaceful, so strong. For the first time, I feel whole. And that feeling has informed every area of my life. Everything I need is within, and I feel safe and protected by my own self. G, her partner, and I are doing better than ever. And I feel 100% confident in our relationship and that we can get through anything together. A big, huge thank you to you. You've truly helped me change my life. Truly. Okay, reading that to you just now brought me shivers and a little bit of tears. Joy tears. I also was invited to one of my old clients' wedding, which was such an honor. And she shared how much, how the love that they now have, their overflowing love, as was described by her partner, wouldn't have been possible if she hadn't coached with me. And she later emailed again to say, we've both taken this special time to celebrate the depth of our love and how much we've already grown and will continue to grow together. And we honor and acknowledge that so much of that growth was catalyzed through working with you. You're truly so special to us, Hannah. And another client who ended with me some months ago reached out to share with me that she is in the best place of her life. That was a quote. And that each day she looks in the mirror and just revels in how good she is right now and how excited she is about the future. And she said that the reason that she's able to be in this place, that how she got there was through coaching with me. If you want to be saying those same types of things to me some months down the road, set up your consult now to begin taking the steps necessary to decide whether or not coaching with me is a right fit for you at this point in your life. To set that up, head over to www.lifeisworthloving.com and go to the tab that says Get Started with a Call under the Work With Me tab. Or simply head to the show notes for the direct link. In the meantime, enjoy dipping your toes into these 4 essential foundational steps to having an amazing marriage as a sensitive woman. And be oh so well.